You have been learning English for a long time, long enough to have a vocabulary, long enough to read without a dictionary, to follow a conversation, to write emails at work. But there's a feeling that almost every person who speaks English as a second language has experienced at least once, and that most people have never heard named. You are in the middle of a sentence. You know what you want to say. You can feel the idea completely in your mind, but in English, the word isn't there. Not the right word, not the precise one. You find something close. You use a phrase that covers it, and you finish the sentence with the faint sense that what came out was not quite what you meant. That gap between the idea you have and the English available to express it is one of the most common and least discussed frustrations of anyone who learns a second language. The feeling of being almost precise, of living at the edge of your own English. Today I want to tell you about the man who felt that gap in his own native language, and instead of accepting it, decided to close it, not by learning more words, by making new ones. His name was William Shakespeare. Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in 1564. He was the son of a glove maker. He moved to London in his 20s. He wrote plays, 37 of them. He wrote sonnets, 154. He wrote for the stage of the Globe Theatre, which held 3,000 people, for audiences that included everyone from the Queen to market sellers, all standing in the same yard, watching the same words. He wrote in English, but it was not the English you or I know. It was an English that was younger, less settled, still forming. A language that had been through 3 invasions, absorbed Latin and French and Norse, and was still deciding what it was. A language without rules that everyone agreed on. And Shakespeare, working in that uncertain, unfinished language, did something that no one before or since has done in the history of any major world language. He invented it. Linguists have identified over 1,700 words that appear for the first time in Shakespeare's writing. Not necessarily because he was the absolute first person to use them. Language is never that simple, but because he was the first to write them down with enough precision and power that they survived, that other people read them, used them, passed them on. Words you use every day, right now, in conversations you do not think of as literary. Bedroom, lonely, fashionable, generous, manager, addiction, eventful, obscene, uncomfortable, amazement, belongings, gossip, luggage, zany. These words did not exist before Shakespeare wrote them. If you had been alive in 1590 and felt lonely, you would not have had the word for it. Lesson 1. The word you need may not exist. Make it. Here is how Shakespeare made words. He did not invent them from nothing. He took what existed, Latin roots, French borrowings, Anglo-Saxon compounds, and he combined them differently. He put them in new positions. He turned nouns into verbs and verbs into nouns. He took a word from one context and placed it in another. Bedroom, bed plus room. 2 words that existed, put together in a new compound. They became one precise new word for something every person has, and no one had named in English. Manager, from the Italian maneggiare, to handle, to control, especially horses. Shakespeare brought it into English in a new context. It stayed. Lonely, from lone, already existing. The suffix transforms it. But the word lonely as a full emotional description of a state of isolation that you feel rather than merely inhabit. That was Shakespeare's. The lesson for you: English is not fixed. It is combinable. It is expandable. When you feel the gap between your idea and the word available to you, you do not always have to accept the closest approximate. You can combine. You can describe. You can make. In your own English, in your own writing, in your own conversations, the word that fits. This does not mean inventing new vocabulary every time you speak. It means understanding that precision in English is not about finding the existing correct term. It is about choosing deliberately the word that best fits the exact thing you mean. Lesson 2. The exact word is more powerful than the correct word. There is a difference between the correct English word and the precise English word. The correct word is the one the dictionary gives you. The precise word is the one that fits this thing, in this moment, for this person. Shakespeare almost never used a correct word. He used the exact one. Lonely was not the correct replacement for any existing English word. It was a precise name for a specific feeling that English had not yet named. Most English learners and most native speakers default to the correct word. They reach for the first option that technically works, the safe choice, the standard expression, the phrase that no one will misunderstand and no one will remember. The precise word requires one more step. It requires you to look at the idea you want to express and ask, is the first word I found the exact one, or is it just close enough? In professional English, in presentations, in any conversation that matters, the precise word is what people remember, not the correct one. In your English, before you choose a standard word, pause. Ask, is there a more exact one? It does not have to be an unusual word. Often the precise word is simpler than the correct one. Simpler and more specific. Lesson 3. Your English doesn't have to sound like English. It has to sound like you. This is the lesson that most language teachers will never give you, because it sounds like permission to make mistakes. It is not. Shakespeare's English did not sound like the English of his contemporaries. His vocabulary was larger, stranger, more precise. He took risks with words that other writers avoided. He invented where others borrowed. He chose the unexpected word, where others chose a conventional one. And that is precisely why you are still reading his words 400 years later. The English you learn in class is correct English, standard English, the English that works in every situation because it offends no one and surprises no one and sounds exactly like what everyone expects. It is the safe middle of the language, and it will get you through most situations perfectly well. But the English that you remember, the sentence that stopped you, the phrase that made you think, the description that made you understand something you didn't understand before, that English was never in the safe middle. It was specific. It was precise. It was someone's. The goal of becoming fluent in English is not to disappear into the language. It is to be completely yourself inside it, to choose words the way Shakespeare chose them, not because they're the expected choice, but because they're the exact one. In your English, give yourself permission to choose the unusual word when it is more precise than the usual one, to use a metaphor when a definition won't do, to describe instead of label. That is not incorrect English. It is better English. Lesson 4. Borrow nothing you can make yourself. Shakespeare had available to him the most borrowed language in the history of any major European tongue. English in the 16th century was full of Latin and French and Italian, the languages of science, law, religion, and courtly life. He could have filled his plays with borrowed prestige. He could have reached for the Latin term whenever English seemed inadequate. He did not. He reached for the English compound, for the Anglo-Saxon root, for the word made of small, familiar pieces put together in a new way. Not because borrowing was wrong. He borrowed extensively when it served him, but because something made from materials you own is always stronger than something borrowed from somewhere else. For an English learner, this lesson has a specific and important shape. You will be tempted, especially in professional English, to reach for the prestige vocabulary, the long Latin-derived word that sounds more sophisticated than the short Anglo-Saxon one, the imported phrase that sounds more authoritative than the combination you built yourself. The combination you built yourself is almost always better, not just because it is shorter and clearer, because it is yours, because it came from your understanding of the idea, not from your memory of what the sophisticated version sounds like. Michelle Obama said 6 words that no one has forgotten. When they go low, we go high. Every one of those words is Anglo-Saxon. Every one is one syllable. She built them into something no one had said before. That is Shakespeare's lesson, applied to a sentence spoken 400 years after his death. The most powerful English is never borrowed. It is made. Your challenge. Think of one idea, one concept, one experience, one feeling that you have never been able to express precisely in English, not because your English isn't good enough, because the right word hasn't shown up yet. Now describe it. Combine 2 words you know into one. Build a phrase from the pieces available to you. Make the word that doesn't exist yet. Write it in the comments. I read every one, and the ones that make me see something I hadn't seen before. Those are the ones I reply to. If Shakespeare changed how you think about your English, subscribe. Turn on the bell, Because next week, we continue building a language that is yours, with a man who used English not just to speak truth, but to demand it. A man whose English changed what we believe about what a human being is owed. Martin Luther King Jr., and the lesson he left for every person who has ever felt that their English was not powerful enough for what they needed to say. The power was never in the vocabulary. It was in the repetition, in the rhythm, in the sentence that comes back and comes back and comes back until it is impossible to forget. Subscribe. And until then, find the exact word. Build the word you need. Make your English yours. Like Shakespeare. I'll see you next week.